Thank you. Um, Barbara M. asks, what will you do about gun laws?
Yeah, that topic is one that unfortunately most of us have felt in those conversations. I was living and working in DC in 2017 when we had the Pulse nightclub shooting, and I remember just like all the other LGBT members of my staff that were from Florida, you know, we're waiting on pins and needles to hear who had survived and who had not. And unfortunately, one of my friends was the first announced casualty there. Um, and as the reports came out and as people were communicating about the things that led to that shooting, you know, it made it very apparent to me that that gentleman should have never had access to a weapon, let alone an assault rifle. And you know, I know we talk about bump stocks and doing away with bump stocks, and actually in Florida they passed a bump stocks bill, which is great on its face for Republicans that want to placate the NRA by not banning assault rifles outright. But it's not enough. You know, we saw with the Parkland shooting, other issues come up. I helped the students at Parkland at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas learn how to engage with the media. Media was taking advantage of those student survivors for the first couple of weeks, and so the Miami-Dade Democratic Party, under my leadership, took them in and had a formal training on how to engage on social media, you know, as an activist and as an advocate. And it was a great exercise, but you learned that we have now a new generation that's been impacted in a very different way. I remember how I felt and where I was my sophomore year of high school when I saw the planes hit the Twin Towers in New York and everything that came after that and how impactful that was to me. And I say to people, you know, that is the same kind of fear and that is the same kind of experience, but much more personal and much more mentally harming at Pulse, or not at Pulse, at Parkland with those students. But it's created in them a lot of the same vigor that was created in my generation for, you know, government, holding government accountable, and you know, understanding and communicating, you know, why there was an anti-war movement after 9/11. Um, but I think that we need mental health checks to protect against students like the Parkland shooter from even being able to access a gun. That student was identified several times by an in-school therapist to have mental health issues that cause depression and anxiety and anger that should have been flagged, you know, well beforehand and should have been made so he wouldn't be able to go to a gun store or a gun show and purchase a firearm, which is what he did. In Pulse, the person was identified by the FBI and others, and was on a watch list, but we did not have the red flag law at the time. And obviously, we have a red flag law now because of that specific incident itself. And so, while we have patchwork being done, right, there's no unequivocal bipartisan pledge to ban assault weapons, to provide the financial structure in the budget to increase mental health services in our public school systems, um, and to adequately protect and educate teachers and security officers and the entire system on how to handle this. We've never thought of it from a holistic approach. We've thought about it from a reactionary standpoint until we look at the holistic way, until we look into actually funding these things. And that's something that Republicans don't like to talk about, you know, fully funding things like public education, like protecting our children and not arming teachers. And so again, this is another conversation where there's a lot of parts to it. I talk to Moms Demand Action, and I'm a Moms Demand gun sense candidate. And I talk to Mothers Fighting for Justice and all these other groups, because it's not just mass shootings. You know, we have to talk about the other end of the spectrum, which is, you know, in community, gang related and other related shootings that happen a lot as well. And while they do not have the same, they don't have the same starting point or lead into why they happen. It's still the same access um, um, and you know, pre-screenings and so on for even owning a gun in the first place. And so we can do a lot of holistic approaches to make sure that these people do not have access to guns, and that will include both sides and go on from there.